Welcome to the Evergreen Nursery virtual tour. I'm Ron Amos, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about Evergreen Nursery. Evergreen Nursery is run by myself, owner, and Vicki Vanderhoof, who is our vice president and sales manager and does many other things for the operation. We also have Pete Polich, our nursery manager. Dion Martin is our container supervisor, and I want to thank them all for helping with this. But a little bit about Evergreen Nursery. Evergreen Nursery is a liner nursery. We specialize in evergreens, deciduous liners, and birch. A little history about Evergreen Nursery first. Evergreen Nursery was started in 1864 in Sturgeon Bay, just about 5 miles down the road here. And it was started as a 1-acre operation where the owner, George Penny, bought a boat, and he took that boat and sailed up and down Door County and plucked seedlings out of the forests and swamps, put them on steamboats, and they steamed them to Chicago, where they went by rail to all over the country and actually into Europe as well. So quite a bit of history at Evergreen Nursery. Just for starting, the nursery did expand over time to 390 acres, which it is currently today. Tom Penny was the last of the Pennies to run the nursery, who I worked for. He was my mentor, and about 20 years ago I purchased the nursery when Tom Penny retired. In Tom's retirement, he still bred birch and kept up with the propagator. So that's a little history. Right now, Evergreen Nursery is located about 1.5 miles from Lake Michigan. We actually got our name Evergreen from we're being in the town of Evergreen. So it's Evergreen Nursery. Our first stop is the head house, where we do all the filling of our trays for plug production for evergreens, trays for deciduous softwood cuttings. We can run 3 to 4 million plugs through this room in a given spring. Our main tray that we use is the 50-cell Sureroot. It's called the Sureroot 50. We fill this here in this room. We use bagged media that we buy in and pre-mix with our formulas. Our basic formula would be peat perlite mixes for the evergreen seedlings, for birch, and for cranberries in various proportions of perlite and peat moss. The softwood cuttings are going to be bark, perlite, and peat moss in various quantities. So those are the main mixes that we use, and this is where we do our filling. We use a Boland Lawson flat filler and the 2 cubic yard bulk container. This is the production part of our head house. This is where we do, under normal non-COVID years, we would prepare our softwood cuttings. We would prepare cranberry cuttings. We do the softwood cuttings in June and July. We would bring the cuttings in from stock plants, from production plants, bring them here, strip them, prepare them, and then they would be stuck in the houses. And then we spray IBA over the top of those. Most of our work is actually done in the poly houses, not in this production room. We do in February and March cranberry plugs. We will do take cranberry cuttings either off hanging baskets or from cranberry from beds. We'll prepare them in here. Prepare about 2.5, 3-inch cuttings, and those will be stuck in trays in the greenhouses. So those are the 2 of the main crops that we do in here. Behind me are the seed germination chambers. We use those for seeding birch that we transplant by hand. We just do a number of varieties that way. We seed them in flats, and then they germinate. As soon as they emerge, we move them to a cooler greenhouse that's adjacent to this room. We do some evergreen seedlings. Most of our evergreen seedlings, of course, we direct seed, but there's a few stubborn varieties we will seed in flats and actually hand transplant. The chambers are also ideal for extracting seed from cones. So we'll collect our cones of mugo pines, various other pines, and some firs, and we will put them on racks, wire racks, and place them in the germination chambers. And we have plastic on the fronts of them so that it'll get 80, 85 degrees, enough to open the cones so we can extract the seed, and then we will clean the seed in here. We also do seed germination tests in here. In February, before we start direct seeding, we will take our seed and test it all to make sure that it's a high enough germination so we can direct seed efficiently. We do have a cooler and a freezer in here for our seed. We store quite a bit of seed. I try to keep a 5-year supply of all the different species that we would seed. So we have good climate control over taking care of our seed. We also do seed stratification. We have a cooler where we will moisten our seed, putting it in moist peat moss or perlite, and it will be kept at 45 degrees for about 2 to 3 months depending on the species. Some species we will do warm stratification in the fall and then do a cold stratification. So we have different stratification criteria depending on the species. Something we do at Evergreen Nursery is that every morning we gather and do stretching, and we do 5 minutes of stretching just to get everybody limbered up and ready to go. And then we have our whiteboard where we put our daily crew activities, who's doing what, so everybody knows what they're doing. Unfortunately, with COVID, we are not stretching in here right now. We're entering at different times. We're not gathering, so we're trying to keep protocol. So we've had a number of months of not doing our normal stretching, but we find that it's very important to gather each morning under normal circumstances and stretch, talk about the board, talk about daily things, talk about safety. So it's one of the routines we've had for a number of years that unfortunately right now we're not doing. Continue our tour. We're stopping here at the Evergreen plug house, where we do our evergreen seeding. We start here with our plugs. This is a 50-cell evergreen seedling plug. This starts in March, April, or May. That's when we seed. We'll fill our trays using, this is the 50-cell sure root. We actually originally designed our own tray. We found it was difficult to find a tray that had a large hole on the bottom for root pruning and good ridges that prevent the roots from circling. So we developed our own with very deep inset ridges and a large hole on the bottom. We used that for a number of years, and then we found this 50 sure root, which does a really good job. So kind of a timetable, we'll seed this house in March. We'll clear the house out. We'll fill the house with racks. It's basically a rack is a little mini bench that holds 10 trays, has no bottom to it, so we get good open root pruning. They're up on blocks. We'll seed using a seeding machine, 3 seeds per cell, 2 seeds per cell, depending on the germination of the seed or the type of seed. And those will go into the house here. They're covered with rice hulls. Rice hulls are used to prevent algae, moss, liverworts. So we use that. So that they're seeded, they're put in place, watered. Then they emerge. Once the seedlings emerge, they are singled out, so we get 1 seed per cell. Something interesting too, as they grow, they're growing under a 30% opacity poly. So we've got clear plastic on bottom, white poly on top, and then they're heated to about 55 degrees during the day, 45 at night, until they germinate, grow. They stay under the poly until usually about July. We open the sides right after frost in June to get good air movement. You'll see the screened sides, or the sides which are open. Actually, this one's not screened because we're replacing it right now. But they'll have screened sides, but they'll be covered on top. That prevents washouts from thunderstorms. Once they get to July, they're able to handle with thunderstorms. We uncover the house, and the plants are allowed to grow in the open, and they will continue to grow here until November, when we get a good hard freeze. We want to be hardy at about 20 degrees before we actually cover the house. If we were to actually seed these and just let them grow through the summer, they would probably grow about an inch tall, set bud, and be done for the season. Since we're interested in really having plants that are going to be 6 to 8 to 10 inches tall by the season, we use intermittent lighting. So what we do is we have floodlights at the end of each house, and 2 in the middle, which you can probably see there, and I'll show you more pictures of that, come on 3 minutes every 30. What they do is interrupt the night. By interrupting the night, we're able to get the plants to continue to grow continuously. typically day lengths start to decrease in mid or late June, and that really tells the plants to stop growing. We can keep them growing until we turn the lights off, which is typically in mid-August. Behind me is a house of white pine. These were seeded in March, and you kind of get an idea of size-wise what we get in one season. This is a very nice size for transplanting, good root structure, no circling, and it's a very nice size for putting into either a 3.5 squared by 5-inch deep pot. It could go into a 1 gallon. We use these in our field operation, but just kind of give you an idea of what a white pine would look like. A seedling crop that's somewhat unique to us is the Mugo pine. We've been growing Mugo pines for many years, and actually we have our own strain of Mugo pine that we developed. Actually, when I started at the nursery 38 years ago, I was doing breeding on pines, and we've come up with our own strain that we grow from seed. Unique about our Mugo pine, of course we seed it like we do our other crops, but when the Mugo pine seedling gets to a certain size and we've got good root growth for the season, usually by mid-July, late July, we'll take the seedlings, which usually just have one stem, and we'll run them through a conveyor with a lawnmower on top of it and prune them so that we get branching, so we get a nice branched plug. So we start that branch at a very young age, so we get a nice, it basically takes a year off of the production of this plant. So this will go to our pots, it'll go to the field, but it's just a nice little liner, just a little shrubby liner we just do by pruning them in the middle of summer. By October, our evergreen seedling plug is finished and actually ready to be potted or planted. This time of year, we will take our evergreen seedlings and we'll put them into our 3.5 square by 5-inch deep pot. So we'll pot these in October so they get a little bit of time to root in. The tops are dormant, just root in so that they will establish nicely as a liner. So this is 1 year later. This was planted last October. If you can see behind me, this is a house of Black Hills spruce. We just covered this house actually this morning, getting ready to, we have about 120 polyhouses to cover this fall, so we're just starting to get these covered now that we're getting freezing temperatures. So this is 1 year later from a plug, and what's unique about I guess where we live in Door County is that we have a very nice native mycorrhizae fungus. It invades the plants at a very early age, often in the plug, but in this size pot here, we'll see if I pull this one out, we'll see that the root system it's like a white white fungus all over, which it is. It's an ectomycorrhizae, but it's hard to see, but close up you can see actually when a mycorrhizae infects a root system, it causes very heavy branching, multiple breaks, and you can see that in here. So even though it looks like, oh, this looks, and we used to have questions, people say that looks like it's a diseased root system, but actually it's a very healthy root system because it's filled with mycorrhizae. If you even look at the top, you'll see the fruiting bodies, and we were actually able to identify what mycorrhizae it is, but it's very beneficial. Once again, we pot these in October. They're covered, they overwinter. In spring, we take the covers off, they get fertilized, they get herbicided, and they grow through the season. This is what we get in one season. It's, like I said, we really manage our fertility, keep our phosphorus a little bit low so we can really encourage the mycorrhizae.